Hello and welcome. My name is Sarah. Today's video we're going to learn how to code your life. But first, a little bit of a quarantine update from me. Some things I've been doing to keep myself happy and healthy as I shelter in place in San Diego, California is I created a list of 19 things to do to keep myself sane in quarantine. So far I only have 16, but I wrote down all these things that I want to do to keep myself and my community happy as we kind of isolate here. And I use little stickers to keep track of when I do those things. It's a fun way to keep track of the time as it passes and make sure that I'm doing the things that I want to be doing for my body, my mind, my family, and my friends. So on to today's video, Code Your Life. We're going to see Stephen as he goes through a process or a pipeline of taking videos, speeding them up and manipulating them as he's doing to create his content. So we're going to watch Stephen as he goes through this process over here, and we will also pause so we can make diagrams, because that's a great way to visualize a pipeline or a process. So let's go ahead and get started over here.
I'm using a program called YouTubeDL, which is open source. It's a command line tool that downloads videos from YouTube. Usually, when you grab things from YouTube for your own video project, you have to determine whether or not your usage falls under what are called fair use guidelines. But these are my own videos, so I can use them however I want. Instead of...
All right, before we continue there, I want to pause for a moment and define two important terms that Stephen uses there. Open source and fair use. These two terms are actually pretty related. Let's start with open source. YouTubeDL is a software that he's using that is open source code. Open source code is code that is put out there for anyone to use. So you can see the source code, you can adapt it, you can use it, you can adjust it, offer improvements, build upon it. Examples of open source operating systems: Linux allows for a lot of manipulation and use there. Android, if you have an Android phone, they're open source. Something like Windows or Apple, iOS are not open source, so they keep that code pretty hidden, so it's not as adaptable. There's lots of conversations we can really get into the benefit of open source, why not everything is open source, but that's content for a whole other video series. I'm sure we're going to touch on bits and pieces there. I definitely encourage you to look into it. As far as fair use is legal use of copyrighted material without the permission of the person who originally made it. So when something is copyrighted, it means that that person owns that created material, whether that's a video or music or whatever. And fair use is utilizing that in your own creation. And it takes into account how you're using it, whether you're profiting from it, how much you've adapted that content, how much that content features in whatever you created. There's lots of information on fair use, so make sure you check that out if you're curious about it. Even YouTube has some guidelines. I'll put some links in the description for you. Let's go ahead and move on to see what his first step in the diagram is over here. I'll go back just a second.
Instead of running YouTubeDL directly on the command line 5 times, I wrote a small script that runs it for me 5 times.
I'm going to take a quick pause here so we can start our diagram. It'll help us visualize exactly what Stephen's doing. So I start over here, my diagram already, to show that there's YouTube on the internet somewhere, and then there's Stephen's computer over here. He's using some code to grab these videos here and bring them over to his computer. And then then we have those 5 videos right here. I'm going to go ahead and put them right here. He used that code to put it over here. He's using that open source code, YouTubeDL. And the name of that file, let's go ahead and name that file here. I think it's called, I can see it right down at the bottom here, dl-all.rkt. So he created a file called dl-all.rkt. And that's what that file is doing, getting these YouTube videos and putting them on his computer. It's the first step. Let's take a look and see what the next step is here.
Now, I'm writing a program called ToShotCut, in which I specify that I want to combine each of the downloaded files into one 25-second clip where each video is just 5 seconds long.
All right, That was the next step. Let's take a look and add that. So Steve wants to take these videos. He wrote a file. Let's write the name of that file. It's called 2shotcut, 2-shotcut, which is the name of some open source video editing software. And what that file did, let's see if we can remember. What that file did is it took each of these videos, fast forward that, made them a little bit faster, and put them into one giant video. And he takes each one of those videos, puts it together, each one of them is 5 seconds long, and creates a new video from that. So let's see what the next step is. Again, that's 2shotcut. We'll do that. Take each of them, fast forward them so they're not 5 minutes, 5 seconds in one video.
Then I run it on the command line to produce a shotcut file. I'm opening it in Shotcut to check whether it worked, and it did. Let's render it and review.
So Stephen tested what he wanted to do, made sure that his code worked the way it was, and now we're going to see what that ending video was. So if you've seen some of our previous videos, this is a bonus review of the past 5 videos he's done. Then we're going to continue our diagram.
The output of that script will go right here. And since that sped up video has 5 subparts, we'll make a little bit of a progress bar here at the bottom. In this episode, I wrote some scripts to make my pipelines faster, and they worked. Then I faced a dilemma of whether I should keep making them faster or try to provide value to the world. I ultimately chose value to the world. I made a Facebook group and started recruiting. But my pipelines were still buggy, and I couldn't even produce the episode I wanted to that day. I got it up the next day. It was about the extended mind. That's the last 5 episodes in 25 seconds total. Now we just need to clean up these pawns and I guess drop the pen on the paper.
This is another step in Stephen's process, so let's add it to our diagram. This one didn't involve code, but it still involved Shotcut. He took another video that he created, and that's actually what he embedded this other video. He did that sort of like picture in picture as he did that review. He took both of those videos and he combined them to create another video. Because this is what his process generally looks like, is he's taking videos and he's putting them together, sometimes on top of each other. That's what this one looks like. Sometimes they're comboed next to each other, sped up and slowed down. And I'm actually going to give us a little bit of a spoiler. What Stephen does next, we're not going to watch that whole chunk, is he does this again. So he took these 2 videos to embed in another video. He takes that video, includes it with another video. He sort of does this on top of again. So he can practice, keep doing this flow of, okay, so I took this video and that video together to make a new video. He could do this infinitely. It kind of becomes this sort of like meta video inception. Again, the reason that we're diagramming this and the reason Stephen actually does this video is to outline a process. Because if you want to make code your life, make your world better through code, you're going to have to first see the process as is. So in this process, Stephen sees where he already has code, and he also saw places where he didn't have code, embedding this clip on top of each other. Now that he's got this, he can see this, he could say, well, maybe I want to start adding code to this to speed this process up. He also has it on video, which is great because you can actively see, now that I've made these changes to my process, to this pipeline, is it actually faster than when I did it before, which is an important part. So in the next video, we're going to take a look at our life. I'm going to pick out an example of something that I do that I think could be sped up with code. And we're going to define that process, define a new process, and test out how code can make something a little bit faster and better in our lives. So go ahead, and I hope to see you in part 2.